Hello, my name's Philippa Stobbs and I'm proposing to give you a whistle-stop tour of the new SEN funding arrangements that are coming in from April the 1st, 2013 for schools. This comes with a very significant health warning because I'm looking at the basic design of the system, not at the local arrangements, and I'm not picking up all the elements in the formula that's developed locally. I'm only looking at the SEN aspects. And I'm not picking up other elements that come to schools outside the formula, for example, the pupil premium. So it's a cut down version, but I hope it's a nice simple explanation for you. And this is all about mainstream schools at the moment, and I'll talk about special schools a bit later. Element 1 is schools' core funding, and it's allocated as an amount per pupil times the number of pupils in the school. And the amount will vary. It's decided locally within the involvement of the schools forum, where there's representation from schools. By and large, this element, this core funding, this per pupil funding, is a bit higher in areas of higher deprivation, lower in areas of lower deprivation. It's usually more in secondary schools than it is in primary schools, and hence it's known as the age-weighted pupil unit because it varies with age. Now, for my purposes here, I'm using £4,000 as the basic pupil unit of funding, and obviously, as I've said already, that's likely to be a bit less in primary schools, but many schools will have £4,000, many secondary schools will have £4,000 in their budget per pupil. And that's element 1 in the funding in mainstream schools. The second element is the delegated additional educational needs funding. That's what it's known as at the moment, but by and large, in the new funding arrangements, this element is referred to as the notional SEN budget. It's delegated against the profile of children in the school, so it's not a per pupil amount, but it varies according to the local formula, but it's set against a number of different factors about the nature of the pupil intake to the individual school. And that's partly about deprivation, for example, the number of children who might be eligible for free school meals in the school. And it's also allocated against the profile of attainment on entry to school. So, for example, for secondary schools, taking more children who haven't achieved level 4 at the end of primary school is likely to lead to more money in this notional SEN budget. So here's a school with an allocation across all their pupils. Here's a school with a lot more money allocated against their pupil factors. So that's, as I say, deprivation and profile of attainment on entry. And here's a school which has got an amount of funding that's somewhere in between the two. And that's the school we're going to look at in a little bit more detail now. So, for many of the pupils in this school, the school will only draw on the £4,000 or somewhere in the region of £4,000 in order to fund their education. For some pupils, they may need to draw on that notional SEN budget to fund anything up to £6,000 worth of additional provision. So this pupil here requires obviously the £4,000 per pupil funding. On top of that, this school is spending £6,000 to make the suitable provision for that pupil. Here's another pupil for whom the school is putting in an additional £4,000 over and above the per pupil funding in order to meet his needs. Now, here's another pupil whose needs require provision that costs more than the £10,000, which is the proposed limit on schools' funding. So this pupil is going to require a total of £14,000 worth of funding. That additional £4,000 over and above the £6,000 that the school has already put in on top of the pupil unit will come from the local authority's high needs block through what is being called top-up funding in element 3 of the budget. So for any pupil who costs the school more than that additional £6,000 over and above the pupil unit, they will need to approach the local authority for funding from the high needs block. Some local authorities may already have delegated more than that £6,000 to schools, so they may seek ways of delegating additional funding from the high needs block, but in which case that will be made clear locally to schools. But this is the, as I said at the beginning, this is the basic design of the system, and there will be local variations. Okay, so I want to move on to special schools now. Special schools, it is assumed that all the pupils in special schools will cost at least £10,000. So that £6,000 extra that schools find from within their delegated notional SEN budget is part of the core funding for special schools. And then on top of that, the local authority will need to fund places at special schools in relation to the cost of those places. So this special school, for example, is going to cost a total of £20,000 per pupil. So that's £10,000 on top of the core £10,000 that special schools will be allocated on the basis of the number of places that they have. Here's another special school where the total cost of a place is £25,000. The top up on top of the 10k core funding is 15k. The total cost of a place in this school is £38,000, so it's £10,000 for the core funding and £28,000 on top of it. So I hope that was nice and clear, and I hope indeed it feels to you as if SEN funding in schools is actually a piece of cake. Thank you.